Well, a very warm welcome to our special presentation, the Question Hour show from the Parliament House complex, the show where we bring you important unstart questions asked by the members of the upper house during the historic 250th session of the Rajya Sabha and the response given by the government in written format. I'm Kriti Mishra, and joining me is my colleague Rajat Kain.
Thank you for watching this edition of Question Hour.
So Rajat, let's commence the Question Hour show. And the first question that we've picked up in this edition of Question Hour is from member Anil Agarwal, and this one pertains to the Ministry of Home Affairs. And Mr. Agarwal has asked the government whether it is aware of growing incidents of cybercrime in the country and the steps taken by the government to combat the menace of cybercrime.
And replying to the query, the ministry said the police and public order are state subjects as per the Constitution of India, and states are primarily responsible for prevention, detection, investigation and prosecution of cyber crimes through their laws enforcement machinery. The law enforcement agencies take legal action as per provisions of law against cybercrime offenders. As awareness and recording of cyber crimes have improved, there has been an increase in reporting of cyber crimes. Now, data on amount of losses due to cybercrime is not maintained centrally. To prevent such crime and to speed up investigation, the central government has taken steps to spread awareness about cyber crimes, issues of alerts, advisories, capacity building, training of law enforcement personnel, prosecutors, judicial officers, improving cyber forensics facilities and other steps. The government has also launched an online national cybercrime reporting portal to enable citizens to report complaints pertaining to all types of cybercrimes, with special focus on cybercrimes against women and children. Further, to spread awareness on cybercrime, several steps have been taken that include dissemination of messages on cybercrime through MHA Twitter handle, @CyberDost, radio campaign, publishing of handbooks for adolescents and students, publishing of information security best practices for the benefit of government officials, organizing of Cyber Safety and Security Awareness Week in association with police department in different states and union territories. Moving on, next question was asked by member Syed Nasir Hussain from the Ministry of Home Affairs, and he sought to know the details of UN Convention Against Torture signed by India in the year 1987.
Well, the government has given a very specific reply to this question asked by Mr. Syed Nasir Hussain, and the government goes on to say that the UN Convention Against Torture and other cruel, inhuman or degrading treatment or punishment prescribes that each state shall take effective legislative, administrative, judicial or other measures to prevent such acts of torture. The offences of causing hurt or grievous hurt are covered under sections 330 and 331 of Indian Penal Code. The 273rd report of Law Commission along with the draft, the Prevention of Torture Bill 2017 was circulated to the states and also to the union territories. The comments of all the states and UTs had been received and the government is already seized of the matter. In the Crime in India report, National Crime Record Bureau publishes crime data from all the states and union territories under various crime heads which are clearly defined under the Indian Penal Code and special and local laws. The published reports Crime in India are available till the year 2017. Moving on to the next question that has been asked by member T.G. Venkatesh, and this one is to the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. And Mr. Venkatesh has asked the government whether it has recently approved the review of guidelines for granting authorization to make transportation of fuels.
Well, answering the query, the government said Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas wide resolution dated 8 November 2019 revised the guidelines for authorization to market transportation fuels which have been published in Gazette of India. The revised guidelines would promote ease of doing business and boost private players, including foreign players, to invest in retail sector. The said resolution is available on the website of Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas. The main features of the said guidelines are as below. The resolution applies for marketing of only motor spirit and high-speed diesel for bulk and retail business. An entity desirous of seeking authorization for either retail or bulk must have minimum net worth of Rs 250 crore at time of making application. In case authorization is required for both retail and bulk, minimum net worth will be 500 crore. Separate applications to be made for retail and bulk business. Non-refundable application fee of Rs 25 lakh is also applicable. For retail authorization, an entity have to set up at least 100 retail outlets, of which 5% should be in the notified remote areas within 5 years of the grant of authorization. An effective mechanism has been prescribed to ensure that entity deliver on its commitment to set up the ROs in remote areas. An entity is required to deposit prescribed bank guarantee amount as security at the time of grant of authorization in addition to application fee. Well, next question was asked by the member Sambhaji Chhatrapati from the Ministry of Petroleum and Natural Gas, where he questioned whether the state-owned ONGC is looking for auction of oil fields to increase stagnant oil production in the country.
The reply given by the government is an affirmative, and the government goes on to say that ONGC has invited offers to bid out 64 operational fields under nomination regime grouped in 7 contract areas on revenue sharing basis on incremental oil produced. The details of the fields are already in the public domain. Interested companies have been requested to quote incremental oil or gas which could be produced from these fields based on their assessment above the baseline production profile under business as usual or BAU scenario provided in the bid document. The initial period for engagement shall be 15 years, which can be extended for further period of 5 years. Let's move on to the next question that has been asked by member Neeraj Shekhar, and this one is to the Ministry of Labour and Employment. And Mr. Shekhar has asked the government whether it has conducted any study to ascertain the migration of labourers from rural areas to urban areas because of shortage of employment opportunities in the rural areas.
Replying to the query, the ministry said as migration of workers from rural areas to urban areas is a continuous process and the migration workers keep on moving from rural areas to urban areas in search of work. Therefore, it's not feasible to keep record of such migration. No such survey has been conducted by the central government in this regard. However, according to Economic Survey of the year 2016 and 17, the size of workforce as per the census 2011 was 482 million people, and based on extrapolation, this figure would have exceeded 500 million in the year 2016. If the share of migrants in the workforce was estimated to be about 20%, the size of the migrant workforce can be estimated to be over 100 million in 2016 in absolute terms. To prevent migration of unemployed workforce, the government has enacted Mahatma Gandhi National Rural Employment Guarantee or MNREGA 2005, which aims at employment generation in rural areas by guaranteeing a minimum 100 days of wage employment in the financial year to a rural household whose adult member volunteers to do unskilled manual work. With an objective to generate self-employment opportunities in rural and urban areas, as well as enhancing the skills of migrant workers, the government is implementing various skills development schemes. Now, further, Deen Dayal Antyodaya Yojana, National Rural Livelihood Mission funding and training is provided for entrepreneurship and self-employment. Moving on, next question was asked by the member Parimal Nathwani from Ministry of Social Justice and Empowerment. He asked details of the government schemes available for deaf and dumb students, both boys and girls, across the country.
In the response, the government says that the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities is implementing scheme scholarships for students with disabilities, including deaf and dumb students, which has following components. Now, these components include post-matric for class 9th and 10th, post-matric for class 11th to postgraduate degree or diploma, top class education for graduate degree, postgraduate degree, diploma in notified institutions of excellence in education, National Fellowship for Persons with Disabilities for MPhil, PhD in Indian universities, National Overseas Scholarship for Master's degree, doctorate in universities abroad, and also free coaching for competitive exams for Group A and B posts and also entrance examinations. In addition, the Department of Empowerment of Persons with Disabilities is implementing a central sector scheme, namely Deen Dayal Disabled Rehabilitation Scheme or the DDRS, under which grant and aid is provided to non-governmental organizations running projects for the welfare of persons with disabilities, including deaf and dumb students, aimed at enabling them to maintain their optimal physical, sensory, intellectual, psychiatric or social functional levels. And moving on to the last question of this edition of Question Hour, and this one has been asked by member K. Ravindra Kumar, and this one pertains to the Ministry of Steel. And Mr. Kumar has asked the government whether it has conducted any study to ascertain the use of domestic steel in government infrastructure projects.
Well, government replied saying that in budget speech of financial year 2019-20, the government has highlighted its intention to spend about 100 lakh crore in infrastructure projects such as highways, ports, airports, housing, piped waters to every household. All the initiatives shall use steel. According to Ministry of Steel estimate, total requirement of steel in the country is likely to rise about 165 million tons per annum by the year 2024 and 25. Through the Domestically Manufactured Iron and Steel Products Policy 2017, which was later revised in May 2019, it's now mandatory for central government agencies as well as their EPCs, that is engineering, procurement and construction contractors, to use domestically manufactured steel only. This policy, however, doesn't presently apply to the state governments.
So these were the important questions and answers in this edition of Question Hour. But on the other side, we'll have Prashnakal in Hindi with our colleagues Arvind Singh and Kriti Singh. Please stay with Rajya Sabha Television.